Hey everyone, I'm joined today by two really good people. I want to welcome Dave Carroll, who is the small business team leader at Washington Trust Bank in Bellevue, Washington. Four words that I always think of when I think of Dave: relationships, culture, growth, hospitality. The man lives those things, and it's going to be a joy talking with him today. And Nana Gyesie, who is a leadership and life coach at Inner Mileage Coaching in Seattle, Washington. He's got a ton of previous experience at Microsoft, Gates Foundation, a lot of other blue chip organizations, working on leadership development, workforce planning, talent management, a wide range of things. Dave connected Nana and me a couple months ago, and we've had a couple conversations, and this has been such a blessing to me this year, getting to know these guys. And we are going to talk about kind of the parts of our organizations that just seem like they're a little bit unstable, like maybe even in society, there's so much going on, and how teams are these places where we can actually find relationships and meaning and connection, and why leaders investing in teams is actually a smart idea nowadays. And we're just going to get a conversation going, talk about it for a little while, invite each other in, and see where we take this. So that sounds good. Nana, I just wanted to start with you, man. What do you see going on right now in organizations? Because you do a lot of coaching for individuals, teams, companies, a lot of consulting. What's the tone and tenor out there right now? What are you seeing? Because it seems like a kind of a twitchy time out there.
Well, we're definitely the future of work is already here. And to quote William Gibson, the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed.
Hmm.
So recently, particularly with all the changes in the world today, so accelerated by the pandemic, people working remotely, and then more recently we went through the Great Reset, the Great Resignation, and now it's the Great Return to the physical location. That's where the dynamic is, and the tension you're seeing, which is not fully resolved. Maybe some organizations better than others is the tension around remote hybrid or remote work versus being in going back to the way things were during the pandemic over the last 4 years. So what that means for productivity, what that means for career development, visibility, and so forth. So that's a real thing. Also, I think another iceberg that is beginning to emerge is this notion of loneliness even on teams, because as the Surgeon General Dr. Murphy recently proposed, we're actually in the middle of a loneliness epidemic. We're just very good about pretending about it. And what that means is we went through over 20 months of behavior change with the pandemic. Most of us, if not all of us, had our lives irrevocably changed in one way or another. In fact, today there wouldn't be curbside delivery and the proliferation of Uber Eats, even if it wasn't for this sort of black swan event. And so you have that nexus between what is it like to have everybody come back, the tensions managing that, and then what's happening to the individuals on the teams as well. And of course, certainly the opportunities with generative AI are really key, but we're still very much in the very early days in regards to what that means. You just hope it doesn't mean that Yuval Noah Harari's prediction of the useless class comes to pass anytime soon. So that's a little bit of what I'm sensing out there. I don't know about you, Dave.
Well, I guess I would say if I think back now to how we were so separated and divided, right? Most of us were remote during that time period, and then some of us, a small part, had to remain intact, in place, in the office, if you will. And then now, as you said, we're all trying to figure out how to come back together again. And what would I rather do more? Would I rather Zoom more, or do a Teams meeting, or would I rather be face to face with people? I think they're still trying to figure that out. They got used to it pre-pandemic at doing mostly face-to-face stuff, events, just gatherings together, even things with your team, if not with a whole bunch of people that you didn't know but hope to meet. And then now it's just a few people at a time, or a great sum of people on screens, right, with a little bitty square. So I think, and I feel like at work, yeah, we're just trying to figure out what's the new normal. Some people just love to live or remain in the remoteness of it, and others are begging to come back to work. And that is just a divide in itself, trying to figure it out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does. And Dave, you strike me as a really relationship-oriented business leader. Like you strike me as a guy who always has on this hat about clients, um, what they're striving for, your team members, your peers, the culture. I mean, I've known you for years, and you always talk about the culture that you're developing and how important that is to you. How do you think, maybe like, what do you think team leaders should do as they optimize during these times of loneliness and some confusion and some chaos, and we don't really know what's happening and things seem a little twitchy? Like, if you could just like give the magic Dave Carroll speech to 500 managers, what would you tell them to do? Slow down, speed up? Like, what's the way that people can show up nowadays and have a really outsized impact on their teams?
Oh yeah, that's a great question, Ben. I mean, actually, yeah, you said something that I often like to say is to slow down a little bit to speed up a little bit more. And so to say that means for me to just stop and pay attention to the person in front of you. Person in front of you is your prospective client, your teammate, indirectly or directly your teammate. But people just need to go face to face. I suppose even if it is through Zoom, stop and make contact, make connection with. People want to be touched in one way or another, one form or another, knowing that you know they're out there and you want to know how they're doing. It's important. People want to know you care. People want to know that you're thinking about them. That doesn't mean that you have to do it all day long, but it doesn't mean that you have to do it. I think that's the right thing to do. And I'm not sure that as leaders, enough of us are doing that enough.
Yeah, we do kind of have that. Just it comes with the role or the title, but the freedom and the responsibility to say, time out, we're going to connect as people. Like, this is important to how we get things done. It's
Well, yeah, but Ben, it's modeling the relationship that we're asking our teammates to have with our prospective clients and each other. So you're just modeling what you're asking for.
Yeah.
Very simply. I'm not trying to make it complex. I'm trying to show it simply. And I think that's how you do that. And it takes a phone call, or it takes a coffee, or it takes a walk down the boulevard. I think that could change everything. Changing your scenery with someone, finding out how they're doing, what they're thinking, what's up, could change everything.
Yeah. Nana, you've been a part of some really big organizations, some of which I imagine were very dynamic. Some might have been bureaucratic. Some were multiculturally diverse, some not. Some more on the leading edge of things, others perhaps not. When you look back on your career so far, what did you see really effective leaders do in terms of trying to remove the loneliness from people's lives, pandemic or not? Like, what are the people who you either just enjoyed their leadership so much personally, or you saw other people act as really good leaders? What were some of the things they were doing?
Thank you, Bennett. I think I'll borrow from a few things that Dave said, that the relational component or the behavioral component of leadership is really key. But it means that the leader, who's also a person, just like their employees, whether it's a leader of leaders or leader of managers or a manager of people, I think the leader must first eat their own vegetables. I think we're at a time where leaders must prioritize, in addition to prioritizing what's in your book of business, what are the key milestones of your project, what's your delivery plan, your life cycles, and so forth. I think a key part of it is this component of enabling time for reflection. Enabling time for reflection. Why? Because if I may borrow some old concepts, So the Army Navy College talks about the VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world. Well, this is where we are now. And there's a clear winner so far, NVIDIA, Jensen Huang. Well, as the saying goes, when there's blood on the streets, buy real estate. So there's an opportunity there that leaders who are reflective can find. Then I also want to borrow from the concept called mass career customization by Kathy Benko. I don't know if she's still at Deloitte, but she was one of the partners there at Deloitte who came up with this idea that there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach to careers. So now that you have teams, whether they are swarming or they are long-term teams forming, we also know that there's neurodivergence. The way people learn is different. We have new gender norms. So the way a leader relates to the people they lead is also different. So if you don't have a leader who's on the cutting edge of the future that's already here, they're very quickly going to become dinosaurs. And particularly, I know a lot of the work that you focus on team elements is teams as a delivery mechanism for not just impact, but also belonging in organizations, as David alluded to in the beginning. So I think to summarize, we're at a point where it's a prerequisite that leaders at organizations create an enabling environment for reflection time for leaders, but not in an artificial way. I know in some organizations, they play around with learning circles, coaching circles, peer-led kind of coaching and things of that nature, so that it's contemporaneous, not isolated and artificial. But anyway, those are some of my immediate thoughts, building on what Dave said.
Very helpful. Thank you. One thing I wanted to explore with you too was, we have to think about equipping or training or building the capabilities of managers and helping them skill up for what they're facing as people managers. Kind of like we filled their backpacks over years, decades, careers, and some of it's useful and some of it's not. Some of it is like needs to be taken out and replaced with new things. And you just spoke to that a bit, Nana. If you had a magic wand, each of you, here I have one here, I'll loan you mine. If you had a magic wand, what would you imagine would be one capability you'd want to build for yourself? And what would be one capability you'd want other people managers to build? I'm going to be curious to see if this is the same thing. It doesn't have to be. But like, what is it that you wish most for yourself so that you continue to be adaptive into a pretty uncertain or VUCA future? And what is it that you wish for others so that our organizations and our teams are really places that are really productive and effective, but also where people have a lived experience that they want to have? Dave, I'll start with you if that's okay. What would you wish for yourself in terms of an emerging capability to build, and what would you wish for others?
A capability for myself.
Yeah, first for yourself, or I mean, you can do the other one first if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where you're going, but I mean, the ability to be able to ask great, honest, curious questions that pull out the best from other people. And I don't know that there's any formula for that, except for that you really are curious and you really do care about what the response is, not that it's right or wrong. Sometimes I think as leaders or coaches, we could be coachy, right? We could tell people what to do and not even know that we're doing that. And so I'd like to be able to have, if I could, wave that magic wand, like you said, mine's blue, not pink. I would say I would love to be able to ask better questions more often to more people.
I love that. Like I don't know, I think the power of a question is tenfold that of a power of an answer. And we're socialized to be, you're the leader. You always have to have all the answers. You have to have every spreadsheet memorized. You have to know all the FAQ talking points to something. But the power of a question, it's transformative to people, right? To use their name and ask them a question and truly listen to their answer, Dave. I mean, I think I think you're really onto something there. That really resonates.
Yeah, it's just flipping the script between answering the question and questioning the answer, right? It's just not that you want to play a game of, 5 questions deep. Why? Not necessarily that, but that you're just not always going to, here, let me answer the question for you. There's so much more to learn. There's so much more to garner when you learn to ask really great questions that you don't know the answer to. It's disingenuous to ask otherwise, right? I think. It makes sense.
It does, and I imagine that you do that at home and as well as at work.
I try my best. Let's put it that way. I do. I'm always searching for those opportunities to do that. And when I have that experience, both people, or maybe it's a small group, I think everyone benefits greatly from it. I've seen it happen enough times where I know that that's what I'd love to have as a superpower with my magic wand.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Nana, how about you? What's one thing inside of yourself that would help equip you for this changing kind of crazy world that we're in right now?
So Dave talked about curiosity, always be curious. And so I'll be synergistic here and say you cannot be curious. You cannot be curious if you're not empathetic. So you hear organizations talk about customer empathy, employee empathy. I think we're at a stage where empathy is a superpower because generative AI doesn't have empathy. It can read emotion, it can read tonality. So we know that the advantage that humans would have and continue to have is in the cognitive dimension. So when you have empathy, you can anticipate, you can model, you can see, you can identify patterns. So empathy is not just about the kumbaya by the fireplace and like we're waving our magic wands. It goes beyond that. And empathy with curiosity leads to intelligence. Because that intelligence is not static based on memory. Intelligence is always current. And now you're in a time where when the focus is on skills, your skills can become obsolete very quickly. So if you're not curious, you are a dinosaur, and sooner than later in more ways than one. So I'll add to the curiosity and say empathy. Empathy is a trait I want to deepen in myself, and it's a trait that I think leaders should embody. But humans, writ large.
Well, if I combine those two answers, I now you two have helped me. I would frame it this way: that empathy or compassion lends mass to the question. Like it lends something to that question. Because, just a cognitive question that creates a trivial response has none of the weight or the gravitas or the power or the connection of the question that comes with compassion or empathy or imagining what the other person's going through. And if we put ourselves in their shoes and understand their stressors or aspirations or regrets or whatever, then I think we can like cut to the heart of a conversation through a great question. And maybe that brings us full circle. Maybe that's the antidote to the loneliness in our teams. And you don't have to be a leader. You don't have to be a manager. You don't have to be a vice president. You can be anyone who shows up and extends that sense of compassion and asks great questions that create clarity and motivation and connection. Thank you too.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Ben, I would just add to what you're saying in that undivided attention is not something, it's just the opposite of what they've received over the last, 3-4 years, right? It's been absolutely divided. So give somebody some of your undivided attention, asking a great question, being empathetic, as Nana said, and really listening, quietly listening to what's being said. I think you can learn so much. And that learning that can take you also so far. so much so far. And that's a good thing. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity in that. And I mean, all for the right reasons going forward with that person or that group or that team.
Closing comments, you two? What's that one nugget of wisdom that we could share with these listeners, your networks or mine, like that we would want them to take away from this conversation?
Anyone can make a difference. That's leadership.
Thank you. Dave?
I'd say do it now. Whatever you're thinking about, just give it a try right now. Do it now.
Inspiring. We should take this on the road, as we said before. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I've really appreciated your time.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you,
You
Dave.
guys.
Thank you.